Great. Okay. Yeah, second week on the trot, so apologies to anybody who was here last week. It's a different, don't worry, it's a different set of slides that we'll be covering, but there will be a little bit of overlap. Right, so let's get off, let's move and get to the first slide. What we're going to cover. So there'll be a brief intro about us. I'll try and make it even briefer than last week. And then we're going to look at a couple of things that we touched upon last week, but we're going to build on it in a big way. We're going to bring in some other elements to prepare us for this, particularly focusing on open data, open information, open knowledge. We're then going to cover what Patrwm is, how it works, how we plan it, and then hopefully we'll start to do something more practical, which is how we can use this data and free tools to start understanding our places and sharing that understanding and increasing our knowledge. So there will be some blatant advertising for Google spreadsheets, mainly because it's down to how we can share that information. And hopefully we'll be able to see some insights. I was hoping to find some really fantastic insights and spent an entire morning trying to make it look nice, but that'll have to come later. And then we'll have a summary to cover what we've learned and any comments and Q&As. So who are we? There's 9 of us now. I think there's going to be 10 in the new year. We've been around, this is our 5th year, or it will be in January, so we're counting ahead. These are the organisations we work for. Some Welsh local authorities, Department for Transport, KPMG, housing associations, and we work very closely with Mentor Mon on a number of projects, including Smart Towns, where we've supported that with the Patrwm platform. Right, this one is the same slide. There's about there's probably 2 slides that are the same, but it's important for us to understand this. Data, because that's all we're doing with Patrwm and what people are doing with other systems that are used across Wales. We're collecting data from very simple sensors. I've got a whole selection here to show you, but here's one that we prepared earlier. So this is a sensor that we make, and it collects data on how many particulates are in the air. It's got a little nifty fan, it sucks air inside there, and then it measures them. And all we get back are some numbers. So it's data that's we're collecting, nothing else. Information is what we do with that data. So we give it context. We give it a time, we give it a date, we give it a name. So what might have been 17 suddenly becomes 17 degrees centigrade. So yeah, sorry about that, everyone who was here last week, but we covered that earlier. But it's important to look at those 2 core elements. But where we're moving out to now for this seminar is it's knowledge. Knowledge is what we're trying to create and share, which creates understanding. I hate the term wisdom because it's something I've never actually achieved, but we want to create shared understandings of places, what are happening to them, and what's being done. And a good way of demonstrating a difference between information and knowledge is if the science teacher in our school in Caernarfon says Bethyl H2O, what's H2O? The answer will invariably be water dŵr. Doesn't really mean much. It doesn't knowledge. It's just information. They've understood that the terms H2O means water. What's knowledge is this. It's a university professor asking a group of postgraduates, Bethu H2O, and they'll come back with a large range of answers, which can really describe what H2O means, what water is, the relationships between the molecules, the proton transfers, etc. That's knowledge. It's information that's been collected and worked on and shared and either disproved or proved. And knowledge is what we're out to try and create here. Right. So that was the little seminar on the data information knowledge pyramid, as it's known. what we're keen to get across here is the big difference between the data that your organization might collect on council tax revenues, rent arrears, traffic density, all of these different metrics that organizations might collect in the civic space in Wales. The difference we've got is we are adherents and we practice it in what we do. It's open data, and open data means this. It means the data must be available as a whole and at no more than a reasonable reproduction cost. We're winning here because Patrwm users, in terms of the public and businesses and community, they don't pay anything. Preferably by downloading this data over the internet, we win on that one. And the data must be available in a convenient and modifiable form, which we have. We've got two ways of making data available. One is as a CSV file or as an image file, or there is access via what's known as an API, where organizations can pull data continually or on a daily basis from the database. The terms that the data must be provided under must allow everyone to be able to reuse, redistribute, intermix with other data sets. That's the key element of open data. And universal participation, everyone must be able to use, reuse, and redistribute. There should be no discrimination. And that's true apart from one set of data that we collect, which we can't share for the right reasons because it's to do with privacy. But users, communities who are registered with the Information Commissioner and have a legitimate purpose, they can see that data. It just can't be shared. The results of their efforts can be. So that's open data. It's vital. It's essential for us to be able to create understanding and knowledge. Right, Patrwm, what is it? First and foremost, where is it? And we're now in all of these places. It's beginning to look quite interesting now. We're right down as far south, or we will be in the new year, or at some point in the first quarter, right down in Crickhowell, and we're all the way in the top in Patrwm, and we go across from Prestine right the way across to Aberdyfi. So we're beginning to and we're no longer just based in the northwest of Wales in Gwynedd and Anglesey, and hopefully this will bring some new insights. We don't just cover towns. First thing to get across here is that the system was developed in order to collect and share data about town centres, importantly town centres. But we do have smart places. We've got a smart island, which is an essentially Bardsey Island. And we have visitor attractions throughout beauty spots such as Patrwm or Bwthyn Ogwen or Traeth Bychan, where I can guarantee there is no such thing as a town, but there are lots of visitors. So there's lots of data that we can collect and help those places understand what's happening and what has happened. Now that can we're not fussy here. I know we're talking about smart towns. If a community wants to measure the impact of traffic in a location or look at measures that they might want to take to reduce traffic to and from a school at between 8 and 9, i.e. smaller subsets of a place, then that's just as applicable, and the platform can be used for that. So it's about making smart places, but the focus today is obviously on towns. So that's where we are. In the new year, we do have ambitions to move across the border. So hopefully there'll be several more, mainly in the north at the moment, that start to join the system. Okay, now a town, a place. So I'm trying to get the fundamentals done before we hit the dashboard and we start looking at things. This is Pwllheli, one of the first smart towns that we did. It's that old. There's a couple of pieces of equipment that now need to be replaced, which I think are going in next week sometime. It's a pretty large setup. We've got 14 access points. You can see here on the left-hand side. These are the locations of the access point. The little blue dots represent access points. I'll show you what an access point is in a minute. And the orange area indicates the area that we're measuring. Unfortunately, There's a small part of Pwllheli town centre here that isn't being measured. It was principally down to budget, but it still hurts. I'd like to be collecting data and sharing data about this part of the town. But I think we do have a good coverage of the key elements of the town centre. Let me just go back. You'll also notice that there's all these blue boxes here that sit on different businesses. We've also got something here that's a green one, which is what we call the network anchor point or the network entry point, which is the town council offices. We design our networks in a specific way. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way, but we believe that not just should we be covering the town centre comprehensively, but that we should be providing a comprehensive service across that area. So that means Wi-Fi or data in other elements. So we do this by having a network anchor point, and we bring usually, if we can, a fibre line into that point, which tends to be either a community centre, a town hall, civic officers, something that is part of the community and is persistent. It's not going to shut down or close or do anything. Although in Pwllheli, the room it was situated in did have a ceiling collapse, so it's currently the equipment sat in the council chambers, I think. But that's the green bit. And what that means is here, every one of these blue points can see the next point. So in theory, somebody could arrive in this car park here and they could be logged in here. And it just means that as they walk around the town, that they are continually connected to the service. Some of these areas in the middle won't be, because there's no footpaths or anything else, but on the main thoroughfares, we're capturing them. And although that just sounds like we want to be really nice and provide visitors or people who work in the town centre a wonderful Wi-Fi service, it actually is far more cynical than that. I'm sorry to say. It's so that we can start to understand more about things like dwell times, because we're seeing that device once they've logged in or whatever in a GDPR compliant way, but we can see them. So, and this is what we do. And this is that we use this method as well to plan the network, not just with the community and the business, but also with local authorities, etc. These maps get shared so that we can get feedback in on how to get to the final design. So that's just one of the 30 odd that we've put in. It is one of the larger ones, I would say. It's probably in the top 10. And what am I talking about with all this equipment? So here's a wonderful selection of some of the most boring photographs you could possibly imagine, which is my photo selection. Again, we've got a bit of Pwllheli in here. So here is the equipment. So the bit that we use is this one here. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but it's the access point. This is something that provides the service. In this case, if we go back, it's the one that's located right down here, and it helps along with the Kigi, the butcher, to provide good coverage over a key area of the town, which is the Pwllheli market, and where many buses, etc., as well come into the town. So those are the access points. That's what we use. Cisco Meraki look different and they do different things, but they operate in exactly the same way. And these little fellows up here are the bridges, which is what connects one part of the network to the next. Here we've got some more kits. This is in Patrwm. We've got a bridge and we've got an access point. And here we've got something that looks uncannily like this, which is the particulate sensor. So we tried to make sure that that was in the right place. And then we've got here, the third picture here is really the hardware that drives everything. So it's a small cabinet that's lockable for security, and that's where the line comes in, and it's where all the key equipment is stored that helps us run and support the network as well. This one is the one that feeds unessentionally. It's not unessentionally, it's on the mainland, but that's one. So that's the equipment that we use to gather this stuff. And here's a much more aesthetically pleasing picture of a sensor, but they don't have to be as big as this. They can be quite discreet. They can look like this. This is one I've just got in a box that I can't wait to open up, sadly. Um, so these are some of the sensors that we use to collect data in different places. Um, this one is really more to get across to you what's happening. The red box is what I've just talked about. It's a smart place. It's a place. It could be a place with another place as part of it. So, for instance, in Caernarfon, we've got a sub place called Ceillechi, and we've got another one called Doc Victoria. Um, and that means that we can give statistical data on the subplace and the place as a whole. We also have our LoRaWAN gateways in there. It's basically that this is the where we acquire data. The red box is where we acquire. The blue ones are the boring ones, really, but most of the things that we use tend to be able to be managed online via the company that makes them. So that's us just accounting for this. And one of the key bits there is wherever there's a third party, if it's open source, for instance, this is a German project called Sensors.community. The original design is being made lots better in a place called Pennegroes. So the version Cymraeg is definitely better than the German one. Um, but what we do with this data is we send the data both to the original project, so that forms part of the global project, and we also collect and send the data to our project. So that tends to be the method. We also do that with the Raspberry Shakes, but I'll cover that more in 1 second. So that's the blue box. The green box is the bit that's taken us more than 3 years and three big versions. But it basically means that it allows us to collect data from thousands of sensors in real time and produce real-time data and the historical data, and do it in a cost-effective way and do it in such a way that we know where something is, where it lives, what height it is above the ground, little pedantic things like that. Um, so that's the green box. And then the grey box is a bit of a Cinderella at the moment. I've seen one name on the list from a community that we're really keen to work with on this. Um, this is called Porth, and we keep it separate. And I want to make sure people can see that this is separate. When people log into the Wi-Fi, so that little white line there, when people actually log in and they complete the survey that asks some questions about the reason for the visit, age, where did they come from, what's their preferred language, just 5 really short questions. This data doesn't go anywhere near this because this is all for open data. This is where we share. This data initially comes to something called Podth, which is where we keep, store, and process Wi-Fi user data against communities, against places. Some of it does end up in Patrwm, which we'll show you, but none of it is personal. It's just aggregated. And the only people who can have access to that data are the communities and the local authorities that are involved in this. And whichever community would like to have access, they have to show that they've got and they're properly registered with the Information Commissioner so that we're compliant with law. So it's sorry again, I haven't come up with a better slide for this. I apologize every time I show it to someone, but it's just trying to get across the different components and what we use to create the system itself. So, what can we do? What are we going to be able to do on the rest of the session? So, my favorite to me, other than open data, the whole rationale behind all the work we put in is to compare data between towns and your own smart place. Um, the reason I go on and on about this, again, apologies, is because to me, measuring your town or your place and seeing how footfall might change or how the visitor purpose might be different on a Saturday to a Wednesday, brilliant. You can do lots with that data. You could then say, right, we're going to have a food festival, or we're going to have free parking, or we're going to do a big Facebook marketing campaign, whatever different things that you are planning on doing to make a difference to the place, you should be able to see the impact of that in Patrwm. Great. But to us, the real value in this data, which turns it into information and knowledge, is the fact that you can look at your peers, and I'll cover that in a bit more detail when we actually go onto the system. So that's the important bit. There are now nearly 40 places on there. There will be places that you might regard as very similar to your own, or something you think might be just very, very good at what it does, and you want to try and see how you can improve your place by measuring what's happening. Um, the next bit is the core elements of what we'll see, which is visualizing metrics across time and against events or interventions. Events can also be a weekend or a bank holiday. It doesn't have to be free parking. Then you can look at how to download data. I've been a bit fanciful calling it BI, business intelligence. But what you can do with something like Google Sheets, although it's not as good as a BI system, the system can allow you to extract that data and put it into both. Um, and then how do you share that? How do we create understanding? And then the final one, a brief look at just how we communicate with visitors using email, and how we can measure how successful that is. So here is Patrwm. I've got here three places that are all I think it's fairly reasonable to state are communities that have lots of visitors. They have lots of tourists. In the case of Beaumaris specifically, it is also a town with a large local market for shops, but you could also argue the same for Abu Dhabi and Bethgelert, just on a smaller scale. And what we're looking at here is what's called a visitor dwell time. That is how long people and what's the quantity of people that's staying there. And at this point, I've got to be straight with everyone and say that when we're saying that there are the Bethgelert in what looks like Easter 2023 had more than 1,600, no, yeah, 1,600 visitors on that weekend, on one day that weekend. We know that figure is much higher. Okay, so one thing here is what we're showing here is the change in busyness in each place. We are creating those numbers by whenever a mobile phone is on and is going through your place and it's not connected to Wi-Fi, it will be normally sending out a message depends every 2 to 6 to 10 minutes, depending on the operating system and the battery. And it's going, hi, here I am. And it's basically looking for a network that it's already joined, which is why when you go home, you suddenly sit down, you've got your cup of tea, and you'll be connected to your Wi-Fi. And it's because your phone has been going, hello, here I am, all day, maybe, forlornly with no friends. It gets home and the network it's joined goes, hi, and it joins. And we're counting those. Now we've literally got trillions of those in the database. Now we've got two problems, one of which we're addressing in quite a novel way, which is why I brought water into things. So most of the devices that are out there, I'm going to say most, in excess of 80% of the devices, um, every every so often, which can be a day, an hour, they change their address. So there is no consistency. Whereas around 10 to 15% of devices are always sending the same address. So even if the user doesn't log into the network, it's basically saying, "Hi, my name's Shan," and that it's waiting for a network to come back and go, "Oh, hi, Shan, join." So that means that we can count that number. We do all sorts of things to anonymize it. We do something called hashing and salting. So it's no longer Shan, it's being translated into Geraint, and that's then being translated into, sorry, any Geraints on their Frankenstein. So we now literally just counting the occurrences of Frankenstein in that place over time. So when we currently show this data, it's saying that there's 1,600. It could well be that there are 4,000 people in that place. But what we are doing is we're showing the peaks and troughs. So so it's counting devices and it's showing those numbers as footfall, and we're able to look into this. And I think I'd hope you can see this now. Can Has that new slide appeared on the screen? No?
No, I don't think
No?
a new slide now.
Okay. Let me just stop the share and bring the live system on there. So let me bring that on and then share. There we are. Right, now you should see this. This is the real system. Yeah? Can we see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're now using the real system. And when we move over, you can see these labels, and it's saying that in this place, that the number of devices or people it saw was 209 that stayed between an hour and 6 hours, that there were 517 that stayed between 20 minutes and an hour, and that there were 908 that were there between 5 minutes and 20 minutes. So that's how and then we create a total for it. And there were also 29 people, usually printers, as in devices that might persist, or a business owner's laptop, or just people who are working, that were there. There were 29 that were there for more than 6 hours. So this is the footfall, the dwell times that we've got. In addition, and I think we've got this is Bamaris. Um, we've got the dwell times of people, and we've also got the counts. So this is actually giving us a visitor count. So on the 4th of November, if we just were to zoom into a little element of that, I've just dragged over the system and it should enable me. Let me just do a bit more. There we go. So you can do this on any of the graphs in Patrwm. If we want to just look at the 4th and the 5th, I've just got to move over here and drag across, and we've now got the 4th and the 5th on there. Yeah, to get back, because it's always more difficult to get back, just click on the minus up there and you'll be able to get back. Yeah. So we're looking at the 4th and the 5th, and we can now start to see, the peak number of people at any one point. This is over time, so you can see there as we move over the 3rd, we're hitting 4. That means it's midnight, and as we move up, the day gets busier, so in peak in the afternoon, and then we decline down to the rest of the day. I think if we actually just zoomed across this, we'll actually get the time. So to be more helpful there, you can see that in Bamaris, basically the peak on that day was people who were between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 o'clock, which would imply one of two things, which we can look into in a bit. So that's how we do that. Over in Beddgelert, we've got similar data set here. It's the same date range. We can see the weekends. We can see the numbers. One thing to point out to you all there is, if you notice, the initial dwell time is from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. What we're saying there is that although we've got the data, we're not displaying or counting the people who are between 0 minutes and 5 minutes, because we can infer a number of things for those. So that just so you're aware that that's why we start at 5. They could be driving through. They could literally just be posting a letter in a mailbox, or picking something up. So yeah, here's visitor count data. Here's how we use it. What I've done here is I've found 3 places: the Bamaris, Beddgelert, and Abu Dhabi, and we've got the data there. And how I do this is by going to this little circle at the bottom right of the screen. By clicking on this, you'll see a menu appear. You've got 3 options. One is Wi-Fi users. What Wi-Fi users allows you to find out is what we'd call the qualitative data. What we mean by qualitative is it's not numbers, it's people's responses. So we've got the ability to look at the gender and age group of people who've completed the Wi-Fi service, where they've come from, the language preference, have they been before, and the purpose of their visit. What we can also do on this and any other of these things is we can start to filter them. So we could just look at systems that use Plasma Cloud, or we could look at systems that use Meraki, two different systems. So that's the qualitative data. If we go back now, we can look at visitors. And visitors is the actual counts of devices. So we don't know anything about them. And you can see we've got visit duration and visitor count. What we can do here again is we can start to look at different kinds of places. So we could get rid of all this. So this is all of our systems. Okay, here we are. We've got all the systems that are currently live on there. Now, what we could do is we could start to use this filter from up here and say, we're actually going to now pick, and there's four, this is a standard categorization of towns. And we've applied them hopefully correctly to the different towns. So if we click on speciality, we'll see that there are 4 towns at the moment on the system that would fulfill that. Cynarfon, Llanberis, Porthmadog, Pwllheli. We could get rid of that and we could select holiday, and we'll see straight away now we've got Aberdare and Aberdyfi. So we're able to select like. There is a much more complicated set of place classifications that's used by central government. So we could look at rural, town, sparse, and here's the different towns that fulfill that, and we could build them up together. Because the world is hopefully a bit richer than just what's being given to us, you can also create your own labels. So for information there, we could say these are all the seaside towns. So this is how that works. And as people want to be able to apply new attributes to things, it could be something as towns with no banks. Things like that, we could build that up so that you can then group all these places together and start to collect information from it. So that's how we select data. If we go back to places, we've got one more thing to do, which is my favorite bit, which needs more work on my part. The hard work's been done, but I've got to go and reset lots of things. So this is where we've got sensors. Sensors are the things I've talked about. So for instance, in Llanberis, there's a particulate sensor. We could go there and we could select these two, and we could hopefully see if there's any data coming out of it. And straight away, we've got the particulate data there for Llanberis. And we can see there that there are peaks. Not as big a peak this year as last year for Bonfire Night, but you can see in particular across these dates that we do have, and actually there is quite a large one there. And if we drag that down to the day, we can actually see what time of day those peaks were. So it could well be very cold, people lighting log fires, something like that. Much better in terms of sensors for me though are these. These are our ability to count traffic. So if I've just picked Abersoch, so Abersoch is now coming, and this is now for the month of November. This is the traffic volumes for Abersoch. And if we were to zoom in, because there seems to be something happening there. So if we zoom in here, that should start to give us, and if we look at a specific day, I'll then explain what that's showing us. So if we go here now, okay, so, and then I zoom out a little bit. Yeah, here, let's look at this one. This records the vibrations in the ground from 3 different types of vehicles: cars, vans, trucks. The reason trucks always appear to be higher on this is because they create more energy. It's not that there are more trucks. The interesting bit here is are the actual bits of time. And in that data now, we can see relative movements. An interesting one is in Nevin. The landlord of the pub that the unit is installed in can see when the delivery van's been, and the delivery lorry has been there. So this is traffic information that we can that we can access on the system in real time and historical. Now this is the unit here. It's made in Wales and in Panama, so it has to go from Newport to Panama, gets built in a volcano, and then gets shipped back. And we've now got 8 of these, and we're hoping to get a lot more. It's got little seismograph, this thing here. It's a Raspberry Pi. It's quite very fussy about where you put it. My desk isn't a good place. It likes to be on the ground, and it likes to be level. And that counts traffic. Now, what we are working on now is this. This is a different kind of traffic counter. We're working with Manchester University and Aberdeen. Well, it will be Manchester. And hopefully Bangor as well for the meeting next Friday. This is version 2. We played with version 1. It's basically, if you look there, it's got a camera at the back. It's meant to be stuck on a first floor window. And then his camera looks down at the road. So it's obviously if it's measuring traffic, it's a good idea to be near a road. And what it's doing is, without sending any data out into the internet, it's got some clever bits of technology on it that enable it to count the vehicles going past and just share the actual totals. So there's no images shared. It's completely privacy free. And what that's really good for is measuring traffic flow in a place. So it's just that place. So in combination with this, it can really start to help us understand for a very low cost the nature and volumes of traffic and impact. Problem for us is that these don't work very well in Wales. I'm not going to go into the geekiness of it, but suffice to say, this arrived from China today. Christmas has come early. So we're working with Patrwm to make this a LoRaWAN device. So this will actually connect into this in a far more cosmetically enhanced fashion. And then this data can then be shared via LoRaWAN, and we can hopefully, with Bangor and Manchester University, build a more interesting data model. So that's, let me just stop sharing again so I can go back to the original presentation. As it's all very quiet out there, so I'm wondering if people are catching up on sleep. If I go off back onto the presentation, share. So you should be able to see this again now. Yeah. Okay. So I've just run through some of this. Can everybody see that slide there? Particular data. Thanks. Okay. And here's on the new version of our system, we've separated the traffic graphs so that we can more clearly understand the nature of traffic behavior. Nevin is a very interesting one because its high street is kind of different to the other ones that we measure, where there's a lot of through traffic, i.e. traffic that isn't necessarily going to Abersoch or the other places. Whereas Nevin High Street, although there is some through traffic, most traffic tends to be local and tends to be for the businesses that might be situated on that street. I'm sure we've got, I think the deliveries at the pub tend to be at 8:30, which is what we can see there. Right. Now, what we're trying to do with the system is trying to give insight. And so what I've done here is I've pulled down 4 cards for these 2 places, for Nevin and Abersoch. So I've got the traffic data and I've got the visitor count data. So the period is from the 16th of the 10th to the 18th of the 10th. And I've got 2 very different metrics. One is about people, one is about vehicles. There is another metric, which is why I'm not going to go into more detail on this, which is the visitor metric of people who are in the place for less than 5 minutes. So that's the traffic volume versus visitor count, comparing different metrics about a place together. And then the final bit here is pod. So what happens in pod is when somebody logs into the Wi-Fi, they're asked to give consent for that place to send them emails. So if they say yes, then what happens is that gets added to that place's pool of email addresses. And we have some places on Patrwm now with in excess of, in Porth, with excess of 7,000 consented email addresses. That's people who've been to that town or that village and have consented to receiving emails. And what we can then allow people in the communities to do is create marketing campaigns. So, for instance, we could, with a tourist town, we could look at the objective for the marketing campaign could be to make the month between February, between Valentine's Day and Santes Dwynwen, and Easter, to try and generate some more business, because business owners are starting to come back. People are recovering from Christmas, yet the figures are very low. So a town might decide that we want to attract people to come and visit us at that point. So the objective it has been defined. They can then use the data we've collected, and they could find out all the people who visited there in the first half of 2022 or 2023 now, who purpose was for holiday or for outdoor activities, because that's the data we collect. And by doing that, they've created something called a segment. And they, out of that 6,000 addresses, they could find that they've got 850 email addresses of people who came to that place to do those things during that period of time. At that point, then they can create an email marketing campaign which has content, so it could be a web page, etc., informing them of interesting things that are going to happen there or of promotions. And the system not only then sends that out to all of the people that they selected, it can record their responses, who's dropped out, who's refused, and they can then continue that. And people who've replied or responded to something like a quiz or a competition. So that's what Podf is. We think it's one of the most tangible methods of being able to enable communities to come together and promote their place. It's not available to individual businesses. It has to be the community, and the community has to be registered with the Information Commissioner. Now, the final bit, the bit that's hopefully going to start helping bring this together and show us what happens. How do we use this to be able to understand our smart town? So the question I'm asking is one that I know has been asked on more than one occasion. It's great us showing, dwell times and the visitor counts, etc. But actually, how do we know what the busiest time of day is in this place? How can we get the data from Patrwm and manipulate it and share it and start discussing it and build our knowledge and see what we can do to maybe change it or improve it? So this was the original data set that I put together. I selected 3 places: Beaumaris, Beddgelert, and Abu Dhabi, and I selected the grim month of November. Probably not the most representative month. I could have picked something more dramatic, but there's the data. And the way we get the data is we click on that hamburger menu there and we download. Yep, this is it here. So this is where you can get hold of the data easily without a password. You just download the CSV, which is a simple tabular file format that you can import into Excel or Google Sheets or a database. Yeah. One important thing, because the system is multilingual and we just couldn't think of a reliable way of doing this. When the file is downloaded, it comes down with the most ridiculous anonymous name, like N9864328YG. Just so you don't get caught, like I have done on several occasions. Once you've downloaded the file, give it a name, because then it'll be easier to work with afterwards. So sorry, we can't do that at the moment. You've just got to rename it. And I'll run through it more practically, but this is how it works. We use Google Sheets. We've put Excel on our desktops, so we're part of most spreadsheet clubs. We even got Numbers and Neo something, Libra Calc. That's it. But Google Sheets is really useful because, as we'll find on this session, I'll be sharing this sheet with you all so you can all play with it. I do have a copy, so you can break it as many times as you want. And that's the important bit. How can we share this? So what you do is you create a new file in Google Sheets, and the most important thing you do is you go select import from the file menu. And I'll show you this in a second, but just sometimes it's good to show things twice. The way to make sure it all hangs together is you select the option insert new sheet. So every bit of data that you download from Patrwm, you create a new sheet within the spreadsheet. And then we get to this, which is my favorite bit, which is a pivot table. So if I now go back to the sheet and share the screen again, here we go. Right, so this is the sheet I'll be sharing with everyone. So hopefully you can see this. This is the Bemaris dwell times. So what it's done here, sorry, the date formatted itself into English for some reason. It will just come out as a numeric, as in the bits there. So I was using the system in Welsh, so it's bringing out the data in Welsh. The only thing I've added is I added a total field. So this data is just fresh from Patrwm for the period of the 1st of November to the 30th. I've done the same for the visitor count. The only thing I had to do here was actually insert the times in again because the sheets. So basically this is the count every hour of visitors in that place over that period of time. And then this is the bit I like. I don't know, there's absolutely no way we're going to have time to cover this today. But I'm hoping some of you have heard of pivot tables. If not, they are so worth playing with. What it allows me to do is to reframe the data, because clearly I'm not going to learn much about the busiest time of the day from this and this. I've got 30 days worth of data, so how do I extract out of it? Is 1 o'clock really busy? I don't know. Do I have to go down here and look at 1 o'clock again? It looks busy, but not that busy. So pivot tables are the way to try and make the data that you've imported into Google Sheets work. And I did it. It's a couple of clicks, but in the end, I've now got the data. So I know now at 1 o'clock exactly across this is the total. I could create averages on this. I could do all sorts of elements. But what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to understand and share. So what I do all the way at the end here is a bit like Blue Peter. This is something I prepared earlier. And it's the thing that will inform us as to what are the busiest times. And clearly the first thing that attracts me there is the one at the top, or one of the ones at the top. And by moving over it, I'm straight away seeing a quite bizarre thing here. Again, it's being repeated. That the busiest time on Saturday, the busiest peak time was Saturday, November the 25th at 1600. If we go back here, again, we see another pattern here that at 2000 was a. So what we're seeing is that these peaks in Bemaris are telling us that Bemaris has peak visitors later on in the day. Yeah. And as we can confirm that if we go down to the troughs, well, unsurprisingly, there's not much happening on Thursday in Bemaris at 3 o'clock in the morning. So that, like we said, those will be laptops or something that are being counted. And we can see that those bottom figures go through there. So although it's perhaps a little complex, I'm able to achieve something on that place over that month that I can identify the busy times, and I can select the green line to start looking at the 1600. So yeah, there's that green line represents 1600, and we can see here again another Saturday where it was quite clearly busier than others. The implication from that, having gone into this, looking at this in more detail, is that quite a large number of visitors to Bemaris that go to Bamaris on a Saturday go to eat and socialise. So I don't think that's any surprise for anybody who's been to that place, but that's a good indication. Now, for people, the good people of Bamaris, if there's anyone there on the talk, is if that's the case on Saturday, what happens on Sundays? Is there a similar pattern? Can that be exploited? Can activities be put in place to extend clearly the attraction of the place across the weekend, Friday nights as well? What could be done to exploit something that the data's actually revealed to us? I've not done the graph yet with Beddgelert. It's there for people to play with. What I have done is I've given an indication here of how horrible data can look, but what we're working on with this is how we can now use this data here that is in essence the level of busyness of vehicles at different times of the day, and there's lots of it. How we can then tie that in with the number of people and see if we can come to a more accurate answer to inform things like environment. Yeah, so if I now move back to this, you should still be on this now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the final one here, yes, is one of the questions we're working on answering here using data downloads is what is the relationship between visitor count and traffic volumes? And that's where we've got that data there that we're pulling back, but we need to bring in the sub 5-minute visitor data. But there's me, that's me producing that graph there straight away of car versus time. I think it is actually just, it's hiding somewhere there. So we will then overlay using the pivot table the actual visitor count data to see where the parallels might be. Finally, just to emphasize that, it's, as you hopefully you can see, that two key systems we've developed here available under an open source license. It's been funded by the taxpayer, so there's no license fees, and the data is open to share. So yeah, that's hopefully what underpins the system. We've put some useful resources there covering guidance, training resources, a map of where we are. So yeah, I've managed to make it through till 3 o'clock. I think that's it. I even forgot.
Great. Lovely. Thank you, Paul. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Paul?
Yeah.
Fab. Bonnie, over. Fab, you've got yourself off mute there, haven't you?
Yes. Is that okay? Can I ask now? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Bonnie.
How are you? Okay.
Relieved. It's finished. Well, no, I knew you were going to ask me a question. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Yeah. I was just wondering, do you know if the Beddgelert Tourism Association is, I should know the answer, but I don't know. Do you know whether they're the ones at the moment that have the use of the email marketing
No,
list?
you're not registered yet. No, because I've chased because I really want you to be on it.
Yeah, so, but I'm pretty sure we have already registered
Not
with the
registered. It's
Information
not registered under the I'll have a check for you now. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to check that because if not, I'll tell them to register, obviously, with the Information Commissioner, and then we can do that, can't we?
Yeah, for everyone else's information, it's only about £40.
Yeah, because I do it with the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only about 3 standard things that you need to say you're processing. And once that's done, it's all legal. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question was, I know you're a very busy man, but do you think you'd be willing to come to come and like maybe help us do a session where we review the data from 2023 for Beddgelert and help us interpret it?
I'd love to. Yeah.
Please. Thank you. Awesome. So I'll volunteer you then. I'll pass that on.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Diolch.
Diolch. Dim probs.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bonnie. Does anyone else have any questions? I've got a question, Paul. I'm just wondering, do you know any examples of any sort of instances where the data has been used to help support things like bids or grants or anything like that?
No, I know. Okay, well, I think no is the answer. I'm not aware of anything at this point in time. I do know, though, that there are a number of projects that are either being bid for or in the process of being determined, where Patrwm has been basically proposed as a sometimes kind of quite on the sideline part of their bid because it can demonstrate what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more just to do with the nature of progress. It's taken us 3 years to get to the point. The patience of people, the patience and understanding of people like Bonnie, who were one of the first people to use it. I think we're only at the point now where there's enough data for people to be able to use it. So sadly, no, not at the moment.
Yeah, it strikes me as a good opportunity for sort of, I guess, highlighting sort of business of high streets for business plans, or potentially for going into funding for off the back of an event or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
importantly, as you've probably picked up in Llangefni, where I see I was good, I didn't use that graph. It's important when there is an event because we did hear of someone saying, "Oh, nobody's seen our event," and I didn't want to raise it at the call. I'd forgotten as well, pretty much, is that the key bit here is, and the reason why I've got a bit of an obsession with maps and why the maps inform, the maps are available on Patrwm for legal reasons, is you've got to be clear about where you are measuring. Yeah. So, for instance, Beth Gelert is a fantastic example of that, in that the reason that apart from the ice cream that people go there is probably to go and see Beth Gelert's grave. Yeah. It's like a gravestone in the middle of a field of a, I'm sorry, everybody, a fable. So jump in there, anyone who's, yeah, Santa Claus and Christmas. Now, I was asked on several occasions, and boy, would it be good for us to know, how many people who go to Beth Gelert go and visit the monument. Yeah. Um, or if they were doing modifications and they were getting grants, that they could show people, show the funders how much that grant has impacted on the visitors to that part of the town. The problem is we're not measuring it because it's in the middle of a field, a quarter of a mile away from the village. Yeah. So what we're saying there is that sometimes towns have it in their mind that, right, we've got the town Wi-Fi and this event's going to happen, but that event could be held in a field half a mile from the town centre. And so then they're going to look at the data and kind of go, well, nothing's happened. And it's like, well, no, because nothing's happened because the event is half a mile away. It's not being measured. So yeah, it's important when people are thinking about this, that the area, if there are things that happen regularly, it could be a sailing club, or something like that, that those can in some way be brought into the system. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Clifford, did you take yourself off mute?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Clifford.
Nice to see Paris on the map.
Yes, it is. Good to meet you as well. Yeah.
I've noted a few questions. I can't actually read my own handwriting, but I'll try. You've got the data store, which you showed us, and we can get access to that via CSV. How big is the data store? How long do you keep the data for?
Forever.
Right.
It's the aggregated, the processed. And so as going back and trying to be consistent, we keep the information for as long as required. The core data is will have a retention period for GDPR, etc. But the stuff I'm downloading, you can have forevermore. 150 people in this place. There is no retention period for that. The particulates, the reasons for visiting the place, all of that aggregated data is there as long as Patrwm.
Okay. Is CSV the only method of getting
No,
access?
it's an API.
Okay, an API. Good.
Yeah. So you can either write it yourself and the answer will appear miraculously, which I always love. But there is an authenticated API, so you could get your developers or BI people
Power BI and drag it into there.
Yeah.
Okay, super. You touched, sorry, I'm going for a list. I'm not taking a bit. You mentioned LoRaWAN and you showed us some devices that you've incorporated into your new version 3, I think.
Yeah.
Can you adopt any type of LoRaWAN if it's, if we webhook, can we put any device on there?
Oh, okay. Right. LoRaWAN is just the method by which the data gets transmitted. So we're really agnostic about that. The form of the data that we're currently integrated into is the Things network, which tends to be what's used around Wales. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Things stack, the Things network, all we need from you is the consent, the application that is getting the data and sample data, the payload, and then we can interpret that. We need information to go with it, so we can give it a location and a name and things like that, but that's just setting it up. So yes.
So in your remote example you just gave, where you can't see that, if we put localized footfall counters there on LoRaWAN, we'd be able to put them in your mechanism.
Yeah, to us, a place is a gatepost with a LoRaWAN counter on it in the middle of a field. I mean, Bwthyn Ogwen is pretty remote. That's got LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi, but LoRaWAN only. Yeah, as long as you've got the signal and the service and the battery to power the unit or the solar panel, because the counters tend to use a bit more juice than other sensors, then we can do that.
Okay.
We're just looking at the moment into putting 2 into Llangors, exactly like that. Made in Ceredigion. Yeah, so local economy there.
Sorry, I think this is my last question, but my notes are really scrappy. You mentioned it's open access in the blue box, I think it was, or the green box. So we could give anybody access to that.
Well, everybody has access to it. There is no.
It's an open source.
Yeah.
Could that person, whoever's accessing it, configure their own little report? Does that make sense?
Well, okay, there's a couple of things there. The configuring your own report, you could, but we'd say Google Sheets is even better. Yeah. Or Excel or anything else but what you can do is you make your own views. And one of the new improvements that's coming out in the next baked version is the graphs will all show the weekends. You will be able to tell us there was a food festival on this date, or a sailing festival, or a walking festival, or free parking, whatever. At the moment, we would put that in for you just because we know it's a need and we don't want to give people logins at this point in time. So you'll be able to do that, but you'll also be able to expand those cards. So for instance, sometimes you might want a card that shows you 3 months in detail. So you'll be able to expand that card out to fill your screen, and that will be visible just to you. So that's your view. When you go to the site next time, it remembers what you like seeing. It already does that. So in one sense, you could have when you go to Patrwm, you could just have a default view, which is Ceredigion, this. Every time you go there, that's what you'll see. Yeah. So, but in terms of reporting and saying, is there a correlation between cars and particulates, or is there a correlation between weather and dwell time? Yeah. I would suggest that that's better done either in the BI or, like I keep saying, in Google Sheets, because quite often in Google Sheets, and there are other flavors of spreadsheet, obviously, you can share that with people before it actually becomes something more formal. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've just figured out what my scribble is. This is the last one. Is there any form of alert monitoring? So if something fails, do we get notified, or do we only
No, there isn't, but there will be, because now that we've resolved the big issues of the quantity and type of data that we're processing, and we're currently the team just finalizing the asset management and how we administrate devices. The next big thing for us to work on, which we'll be starting in probably the middle of February, is quality of service.
Okay.
Because one of the things I think, again, that we've learnt, and we being, as I can see Rhiannon on the screen there, is that quality of service is essential, because if you have an issue in a place, you can lose data. And I think I can be honest about this and say nobody ever seems to want to deal with it. So in the end, that means me and Rhian or Kiki or someone else across 3 places, and clearly we can't sustain that everywhere. So what we're doing is we're putting in an additional piece of equipment on each network that is monitoring everything locally. So then we can ascertain more reliably why a sensor might not be available or why an access point has gone down, and then alert people to that, so that the people who care about it can actually be made aware of it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
quality service is one of the key things that we want to address.
Not yet, but it's on your.
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's me done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Clifford. Some really, really interesting questions there. Thank you for sharing those. There is a question in the chat as well, Paul, from Claire. Does Patrwm stand alone from Meraki, or do you need both? If you have access to Cisco sensors already, would they need replacing if moving over to Patrwm?
No. So that horrible. Let me just share my screen, and I'll show you that horrible slide again. Where is it? Okay, that's the answer to that is here. Okay. So this slide here, the system is agnostic. So if you can see there, straight away there, the word Meraki, we are independent of it. We currently, but that will change in the summer, don't produce devices that collect footfall data. Cisco Meraki, Plasma Cloud, Cloud Tracks, Ubiquity, all network providers, or in the sense of the Luftdaten, sensors.community. They're the ones who operate the system. That's where the Cisco Meraki dashboard sits. We just get consent and permission to be able to get that data from there and then bring it into here and process it. So you do not need to replace Cisco Meraki. You don't, and if you've got some other make, like Ruckus is another network make that we want to deal with, then it's a matter of us writing the code in here, and we add another box in here and place C that uses Ruckus. The data just gets brought into here, and we process it. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Does anyone else have any questions?